All right, it's 7:33 local time for me, so let's get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for spending some time with us today. We're going to be chatting a little bit about how you can maximize the power of your Microsoft security investment. Before we get started, let's do a little housekeeping. So please keep yourself on mute, simply to reduce background noise. We definitely want to make it interactive. So if you have questions, go ahead and throw those in the chat. We'd be happy to respond to those via the chat function, or if you want to, at the end, we definitely will open it up and to more of a Q&A kind of session that you can come off of mute. So we'll definitely have plenty of time for that dialogue at the end. This session is being recorded, so obviously you should be getting a link to that recording after we wrap up. And then last but not least, as a breakfast webinar, we do intend to buy you breakfast. So you will be getting an email with the Uber Eats. You should get that this afternoon. And then hopefully you can have a nice breakfast on us at some point in the future. In regards to that Uber Eats piece, if you can, please in Zoom change your name in Zoom to the name you registered with. If you have any trouble with that, I know there's been some tweaks with Zoom, and they've been maybe doing some updates, tweaking some things. Just chat one of our panelists here in the Zoom meeting, and they'll make sure you get squared away on the Uber Eats gift card. In regards to speakers, I'll be carrying about 10 minutes or so, just doing some level set. My name is Leonard Voling. I'm the Microsoft Alliance Director at Critical Start. I'll hand it over to John Alves, who's Microsoft Practice Manager at CyberOne, to talk a little bit about how they help customers deploy the Microsoft security solutions. And then last but not least, Tommy Scott will close us out with a demo of how Critical Start's MDR works with Microsoft Security Stack. And Tommy Scott is a Channel Business Manager here at Critical Start. So those are your speakers here today. In regards to agenda, really high level, again, I'll kick us off. I'll level set on a couple of different areas, the Critical Start Microsoft relationship. I'll level set on the Microsoft security tools, and I'll at a high level what our MDR service looks like on top of that. And then, as I mentioned, Jonathan Alves will be talking about their CyberOne's Microsoft Professional Services, how they can help you get these tools deployed in your environment. So let's get into the content here. So again, Critical Start's relationship with Microsoft is very deep. So we're actually a member of something called the Microsoft Intelligent Security Association, or MSSP program. This is something they launched almost a couple years ago now, but we are one of the pilot members, essentially a founding member of that program. We've really been on the cutting edge of doing MDR in the Microsoft stack, and I think being one of the first into that program is kind of a tip of the hat to that. We also have a number of different programs that we participate in. Security Partner Advisory Council, Security and Manageability Elite Partner Program. So there's a variety of ways that we're very deeply connected with Microsoft at a product group level. We carry, of course, a number of certifications across our organization related to the security, specifically MS500, AZ500, and the more recent SC- series of exams. And then a little bit about just kind of our company and our people. So, one of the things we bring to the table is, great threat detection content. So we have a dedicated cyber research unit team that's working with out-of-the-box IOCs in the tools themselves that Microsoft brings to the table, and also is generating new IOCs based on patterns that they're observing out there in the wild in terms of attacks and techniques. And then, our SOC analysts, they are really the superheroes of our service, and we invest, significantly in them. 320 hours of training on the front end, and then 80 plus hours of continuous education. And obviously outside of that, there's just a great culture and a great team there that's doing great work for our customers. When you look at the Microsoft tool stack, there's a few things that are unique about it. And one of them is the reach of Signal that Microsoft has. It can be a little hard to define this sometimes, a little hard to put your arms around it. But when you think about all the signal Microsoft's collecting from their public web properties, from Xbox, from Azure, from Office 365, it's just a massive amount of authentications, a massive amount of emails analyzed, et cetera, et cetera. And they're able to take this signal and essentially manifest that in machine learning and AI that shows up in their security products. So when Microsoft Defender is doing a detection, Microsoft is very uniquely positioned in terms of being able to leverage this signal to protect their customers. It's definitely something that is unique. Don't believe there's any other security company that has that kind of reach and that ability to take that signal and apply it in their security tools. The other way that Microsoft's unique is their ability to really deliver on an XDR story. We'll start with an attack chain here. Again, this is something I'm sure you're all familiar with. Attackers can still predominantly enter via business email compromise. They can also enter via a compromised account. Regardless of how they enter the environment, they're going to try to move laterally. They're going to try to compromise admin credentials, take down the domain. As they do that, we want to be looking for them at every step they take. And as I build out kind of this here, you can see the Microsoft tooling come into focus, and Microsoft, with their Microsoft 365 Defender offering, is able to provide coverage for email. So they have Microsoft Defender for Office 365 to provide email threat protection. They have Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, which is their EDR solution, providing that endpoint threat protection across devices and servers. Microsoft offers coverage for both cloud identity with Azure Active Directory identity protection and on-premises identity or traditional Active Directory with Microsoft Defender for identity. And then with Microsoft Defender for cloud apps, that's their CASB. So they're able to extend that coverage to SaaS. And with the combination of all 5 of those tools, they're able to provide coverage from a single manufacturer for email, identity, endpoint, and cloud. And then when you think about Microsoft Sentinel, their cloud-based SIEM, Microsoft is able to also provide great coverage for third-party log sources like Firewall. So 2 ways Microsoft security is unique. One, that threat signal and threat intelligence that they're able to bring to bear to in their tools from all that signal that they have, and then really the breadth of coverage and the maturity of their XDR capabilities, inclusive of these 5 components. There's other tools as well, and SIEM. Across the bottom there, just for completeness, Microsoft does have a robust compliance, data protection, insider risk capability as well. Critical Start, we do not provide coverage for that with our MDR. We see that more as a business function and a compliance function rather than security function, but just wanted to kind of call that out for completeness. So moving on and talking a little bit more about Critical Start's MDR offerings specifically. So if we take that same construct of those 6 different Microsoft security tools that are available and now start to think about how we provide MDR coverage. First and foremost, we have our MDR for MDE. So that's a tried and true MDR offering that matches up with EDR. EDR being purpose-built for response really lends itself to a great experience with an MDR provider where we can ingest signal from that tool, investigate that signal, and take responsive action in that tool. With our MDR for Microsoft Sentinel, that's where we're providing coverage for those third-party log sources, security log sources like Firewall. And then the last piece of the puzzle is our MDR for Microsoft 365 Defender. And so 3 distinct service offerings that our customers can consume depending on where they're at in that journey of deploying the Microsoft security solutions. But with our MDR for Microsoft 365 Defender, you're getting coverage really primarily for email and identity. So we're going to be detecting, investigating, and responding to email security alerts from Defender for Office 365. Same thing for Azure Active Directory Identity Protection, MDI. We're going to be investigating and responding to identity-based alerts where maybe you have signal that suggests the user account might be compromised. So those are exciting capabilities that we'll be telling you more about here as we get into the rest of this session. To bring it all together with a couple of closeout slides from my part, little logical architecture here lays out some of the pieces. With the Microsoft security tools, our assumption is you're going to deploy those in your environment. Those are your tools. You maintain admin access to those tools. And in a moment, John will be talking about how CyberOne can help you get those tools deployed in your environment. So with that assumption, we enter the picture with our MDR service, and we hook into Microsoft Defender for Endpoint or Microsoft 365 Defender or Azure or Microsoft Sentinel via API. So as we hook into those tools via APIs, we're ingesting alerts into our platform called ZTAP. ZTAP is not a SIM, not a SOAR, not a detection tool. It's event orchestration tool. It's a place where our trusted behavior registry lives. And our trusted behavior registry is our catalog of known good. And that is the way that we scale the resolution of false positives. So you can see on the slide here where we're talking about escalating less than 1% of alerts. Well, we do that across all critical, high, medium, and low alerts. And the only way we can do that efficiently and effectively is with the trusted behavior registry. So that's a very unique component of our solution. But as alerts flow in from those three different areas in your Microsoft security estate, our SOC analysts are investigating those alerts. Wherever possible, they're taking responsive action on your behalf. And where needed, they're collaborating with you. And as they collaborate with our customers, they're doing that, leveraging our mobile SOC app, or if desired, the same access to our ZTAP portal that our SOC analysts have. So you can work shoulder to shoulder with them in ZTAP, or you can collaborate and take responsive actions, investigations from our mobile SOC app directly. It's full featured in that regard. So hopefully that gives you a feel for how the service fits in your environment, how we plug into your tools, that alert flow, how those things are worked by our SOC and handed off to our customers where needed. And then the threat detection and engineering piece, that's something I mentioned earlier. That's where we're, affecting the IOCs that are in play, both in the tools themselves and in regards to new detections. So to bring it all together, this is kind of what it looks like in almost more of a table format, right? You've got all the stuff you need to protect in your environment in gray. In light blue, you've got 6 different security tools from Microsoft that we're able to provide coverage for. And with these 6 tools, again, it's a journey. So you might have 3 of them deployed, you might have all of them deployed, you might have 2, who knows? But whatever you have in your environment, we have an offering that matches up with that you can consume. So if it's SIM only, fine, we can provide coverage there. If it's endpoint only, again, we can provide coverage just for that service, or you can consume just our M365 Defender service. A lot of our Microsoft customers are consuming all 3 of these together. And so that's definitely something we see in the Microsoft world, is customers' ability to take advantage of these things and leverage on the integration and the power of having all those tools in the environment. So I'm going to hand it over to John to get into the deployment. As I do, you should be seeing a poll pop up asking what Microsoft security products you have in your environment. So please take a moment to respond to that poll. As you do that, I'll hand it over to John here to talk a little bit about their professional services.
Thank you, Leonard.
Yep.
So I am the services principal and practice manager for CyberOne. And as Leonard was talking about the full Microsoft XDR and the MDR services, where we come into play is the implementation, the standing up of all the different Microsoft pieces, and being able to educate you as the customer on the various products, how they integrate together. So just an overview here, we have full implementation services from every single Microsoft security stack product to various advisory services such as best practices, assessments, and even a managed platform piece where we come in and manage your configurations. We become your trusted consultants and architects, right? So with MDR, we come in and we make sure that you're in a known good state. If you want to pivot over to the next slide for me, thank you. So we come in and we make sure you're in a known good state. This means that we take a look at your business needs. We come through, we work with you to roll out the various tool sets. So for instance, Sentinel or Defender for Cloud, Defender for Office. If you're migrating from one product to another so that you can have the full XDR experience from Microsoft, that is where we come into play. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tommy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and we can get to the show and tell portion of this this webinar. So Leonard, if you go ahead and stop sharing yours, I'll share mine. All right. So we'll go ahead and hit the ground running, and I will have either Leonard or John confirm you can see my screen.
Looks good.
All right, perfect. So like I said, and Leonard introduced me earlier, my title is Channel Business Manager. I will say I do come from the technical side as well as the customer side, having actually been a Critical Start MDR customer. So as I walk through this, I'll make sure to inject not just what the platform can do, what we can do with Microsoft, but also what the customer experience is. Because really that's what's important. What is the outcome of a service like Critical Start utilizing the Microsoft security stack? So we actually have two screens up right now. On the left is ZTAP. That's that platform that Leonard went over, that alert orchestration platform. And on the right, we do have that mobile SOC as well. So I'm going to be doing a demonstration of both to make sure we're very clear on how customers interact with Critical Start MDR and get that full value from their investment in that E5 stack. So real quick, typical dashboards, things we want to look at. How effective was Critical Start's security methodology? So across all tools, Defender for Endpoint, the entirety of the E5 security suite, and Microsoft Sentinel, we collected a little over 590,000 events, and that was in 1 week. So that number for some organizations seems astronomical. For some, it seems right on par. The big thing that I want to point out is, as Leonard mentioned, that threat detection engineering, that cyber threat intelligence team, we actually want to make sure we turn up the noise. Most MDR providers think about how can we be strategic? How can we filter and tune to focus on the alerts that, quote unquote, should matter to you? I personally didn't like that statement, what should matter to me, because, organizational knowledge dictates what matters. I wanted to be told what exactly is happening. So of those 593, let's call it 594,000 events, Critical Start, using that trusted behavior registry, was able to resolve just over 590,000 of them. And so that run rate for automatic resolution is a little north of 99%. But when I say automatic resolution, it's not something that's done in a vacuum that you can't see. ZTAP, MobileSock, they are your platforms. And while, yes, we built them, we developed them, it's where our SOC works out of, every bit of data in these platforms is yours. It comes from your security tools. So there's no reason why we can't let you have unfettered access and complete visibility into it. So I'm going to show you an example of what those playbooks look like and how it actually gets displayed to you. So we don't just say, yeah, we resolved it. Unfortunately, you can't see that. I'll make sure you can get a good feel of why Critical Start takes the actions they did so that you can ensure we are keeping your security posture as high as possible. But I believe Leonard mentioned it, but if he didn't, again, Critical Start bases our investigations on actual metrics. There's no qualitative, it's all quantitative. What is our mean time to detect and what is our mean time to respond? Both of which are contractual SLAs of 1 hour for every single alert we receive. There's no priority-based SLAs. It's 1 hour critical all the way through low. you're going to get the same level of service regardless of company size. But one thing I do want to touch on, as managed detection and response, a lot of MDR providers, they race towards the response and say, look at all these cool things we're going to be able to do for you. And of course, I am going to do that as well. But I do want to focus on the managed detection side, because responses are phenomenal, but only when you know they should be taken, or if you even had visibility in the first place. And so from that threat detection engineering side, Critical Start puts a lot of emphasis on, are we getting the right alerts? Are we getting the right visibility? And so hopping into Sentinel, this is something called Threat Navigator. I'm going to hop into those custom IOCs. How do we turn up the noise? What does that actually look like? So we want our customers to understand, okay, you've invested in Microsoft. What is Critical Start doing to maximize that investment? What are we doing to get better visibility? And so one example I like to pick on is, explicit MFA denial. So this is an alert generated by Microsoft. So anytime someone gets an MFA push request, if they click deny, that's something you should care about, because typically MFA push requests don't come unless the user was expecting it. However, a great example could be that account is potentially compromised. The bad actors trying to get into certain parts of your environment, they're coming up against MFA. And oftentimes what they do is they just continue to log on, and the user finally will get frustrated and just say, whatever, accept. Now, we hope our users don't do that, but again, we're realistic. And so what Microsoft has done is said, hey, anytime a user denies an MFA push request, we need to make an alert. But what I will say, a lot of manufacturers, and this isn't just Microsoft, it's everyone, it's Palo, it's CrowdStrike, it's SentinelOne, they really strive to create a good user experience. And so what they want to do is they want to consolidate alerts into one incident so that users aren't just constantly getting spammed with alerts. And while that's great, we believe that we want to know in the moment. So what we've done is we've actually said, take this query and break apart that aggregation. Let us know that every single time that occurs, let us know in the moment. Because yes, MFA everywhere is what Microsoft believes, and I believe that as well. But actually deploying MFA everywhere is not as practical. Sometimes it's not even possible. And so we want to make sure when we see that in one place, we catch it before the malicious actor eventually finds somewhere where MFA unfortunately wasn't able to be successfully deployed. And so this is just part of that threat detection engineering, again, all part of Critical Start MDR, where we really get a deep understanding of what Microsoft is striving for and making sure we improve it where we can, but also out of the box, phenomenal capabilities. Let's make sure we support that up front as well. Now, one thing I do want to mention is all of those custom IOCs, whether it's created by Critical Start or out of the box IOCs, they are all mapped to MITRE. And so here we've got, the MITRE attack matrix. It's, this Christmas tree looks like it's not plugged in. But if we go ahead and select each individual product, you'll start to see, hey, the Christmas tree is getting a little bit brighter. And so what I really want to showcase is, when we're looking at MITRE attack, how well is your organization covered? We want to let you know how it's covered by Microsoft and Critical Start together. So we did pick two different colors. Maybe we could have picked colors that contrasted a little better. But what you see here, this box is only blue, which means this is an IOC generated by Critical Start. This is coverage that you did not have out of the box with Microsoft. And that's not a ding on Microsoft. Every vendor does not have complete MITRE attack coverage, but they have the ability to be made better, and that's what we're taking advantage of. So what I'm actually doing now, and of course this is a webinar, so I've got a couple things teed up for a demonstration, but I've hopped over into our heads up display. This is where our analysts work out of. And again, this is the only platform they work out of. So when you access this as a customer, you're working right alongside our Critical Start analysts, and you see everything that they do. So right now I'm in my Microsoft demo organization. We do support multi-tenancy, so you can separate, hey, I only want somebody who has access to Sentinel to have this view. Our desktop support, they should only see MDE alerts. We can get very granular in terms of how we present the data, because again, this platform was developed by Critical Start. So we can develop it to what the customers actually need. But in this screen, we've got all the aggregate alerts across all the tools. You see Defender for Endpoint, the first three, you've got some M365 Defender. The only thing that customers don't see that Critical Start does is that SLA bar. I mentioned 1 hour for time to detect and respond. It starts at 60 minutes, and when it gets to 45 minutes, it turns red. 30 minutes, it starts flashing. We are very metrics driven. And not only are we metrics driven, we do have some financial penalties should we not hit those SLAs. So that contractual guarantee of we will investigate all alerts we receive, kind of put our money where our mouth is. But what I want to do is hop into, this is actually a Defender for Endpoint alert. So one of the things that Critical Start wants to make sure we do is we're a true extension of your team. Because, outsourcing, sending all your raw logs to an organization, having them shipping you back alerts, it's not entirely valuable. And also Critical Start is MDR, we can respond. So we want to understand what are our rules of engagement. So you see a little blue bubble here. We want to make sure, what are we allowed to do? So for example, my colleague Brian said, hey, for all devices in this subnet, do not isolate. So the typical scenario we see is there's a core set of production servers. There's a couple of let's call them executive devices that we maybe don't want to isolate. Let us know what our rules of engagement are so that we can respond, or we can escalate quickly so you understand what is required of you, because this is still a partnership ultimately. So in this alert here, Mimikatz hack tool was prevented. Okay, I think most of us on the phone know that this is most likely bad. So Critical Start could make a quick determination and say, you know what, just to be safe, we're going to request full host isolation. We would say yes, devices off the network. That's not us using any Critical Start proprietary technology. That exists in the MDE agent that you're using today. However, that was a quick assumption. What we want to do, and we will do for every alert, is drive towards a escalation that looks something like this. You got 4 bits of information: contextual priority. So this priority does not always match the alert. This is where you see the low alerts become criticals, and then of course, vice versa. And that's because we actually do perform these investigations. With that trusted behavior registry being able to resolve, north of 99% of the alerts, we have the time to actually investigate every single alert, let you know what did we see, translate it to risk. Again, we're not trying to tell you why you should care. We're just saying this is what this activity actually means. So should it not go, or should it go unaddressed rather, here's what the ramifications are. Finally, what do we recommend you do next? So this is where we leave you with a prescriptive next step. What do we need you to do as the customer? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pivot to a quick mobile SOC demonstration, because if that recommended next step was Critical Start wanted to isolate, but your rules of engagement dictated we could not, we would escalate this alert to you. But for quick and easy purposes of demonstration, I'm going to assign it to myself. So you see that I'm the assigned user, and this platform has audit logs for virtually every button you can click. So you can see I assigned it to me. Also, it's now locked. So now Leonard can't go behind me and go, this probably isn't important, let's close it. That's how you create visibility gaps. But if I've timed it right, I'm going to go over here to Mobile SOC. You see I've got 7 alerts assigned to me. If I go ahead and refresh this, that's going to be an 8. So I am on Do Not Disturb. I want to make sure I get no kid pictures during the webinar. If we go ahead and go to Assign to Me, right up top, you're going to see that same alert, 156399, 156399. I'm going to go in here, and typically the scenario is, bad things never happen in the middle of the day when you're at your desk. It's in the middle of the night, or when you're at dinner, or your kid's soccer game, etc. Go straight into comments and, why am I being escalated to? You're going to get that same view, and you're going to be able to communicate in real time with the SOC analysts. But mobile ticketing systems are cool. Mobile apps are great. Everything has a mobile app. The ceiling fan, the light bulbs in this room I'm in have a mobile app. We want to make sure you understand that Mobile SOC is a way that we took your investment in Microsoft and we gave you some pretty powerful response capabilities. So in Mobile SOC, yes, you can see all the information you could see in ZTAP, you could see in Defender for Endpoint. But what these little blue bubbles are, these are things called threat analysis plugins. This is, hey, Windows and Microsoft had APIs. We want to make sure we're truly using them. So straight from here, you can say, you know what? Okay, Mimikatz is there, but who was logged on? Okay, well, a Qualys scanner account was logged on. That potentially indicates that, you know what? Qualys was just doing its job. It's running some vulnerability templates. It was running something that mimicked Mimikatz so that it could attempt to see, hey, is this machine particularly vulnerable? However, if it's 2 a.m., just being honest, I don't really want to deal with this right now. So you can go into response straight from your phone, and you can choose that request full host isolation. You say yes, device is off the network. So that's MDE. I want to focus on how do our capabilities extend across the entirety of the Microsoft stack. So again, I've got a couple things teed up. If we go to impossible travel activity, I will say this is the #1 alert that people bring up when they talk about what they're looking at from a Microsoft security perspective. Okay, impossible travel. Of course, the answer is it's either Superman or they're using a VPN. That's the most common reason we see this alert. Again, Superman not as common. But the thing about this is there's not a tremendous amount of data in the alert. This is the entirety of the key value pairs that Microsoft sends. So there's certain things that analysts need to do to make sure we're seeing the whole picture. And so there's a couple things we can do. We can, get evidence of threat. We can get different sign-ins. But what's more important is what was this user doing when the quote unquote impossible travel occurred? So going to this user, there's a couple different things I can do. First thing I want to do is, what actual activity were they performing with, say, O365? Here I can see they're really just interacting with Exchange. There was no significant exfiltration of data. They weren't just shipping out emails. They weren't a compromised account that was using, an internal account to spam the rest of the organization. They were doing what was most likely just typical day-to-day work. But where were they signing in from? That's equally important. So if I say, show me all recent sign-ins, I want to understand what was going on around the time span of this impossible travel. So they had 134 recent sign-ins. I don't particularly want to look at all of these. So what I want to do is go quickly to event analysis. And I want to understand, okay, what were the failure reasons? Because they failed to sign in, I want to know why. Okay, well, conditional access requires a compliant device. So now I know they were on a BYOD and it was not enrolled in Intune. Okay, that's great information to have so far. So I go to conditional access and I see, yes, they had these failures, but they did have some successes. So there was some valid activity going on, and I can confirm that as well by going and seeing, okay, was MFA applied? And so if I want to see where MFA is applied, okay, go into result description, great, still conditional access was applied. But as we go through here, and I think it's actually easier if we just pop right in here. So additional details. MFA requirement was satisfied by the claim in the token. That's phenomenal. But was it satisfied every single time? And so this is where if I go ahead and find additional details, this always takes me a quick second. And Leonard, speak up if you see it and I don't see it. There it is. Okay, MFA was completed. Yes, it was required and was satisfied in the token. So I'm already comfortable knowing that despite the impossible travel indicated, because they did in fact come from India as well as North America, MFA was satisfied every time. So for most organizations, that's indicative of this is known, accepted, good. But if it was not, we can say, you know what, let's be safe. And let's go ahead and say, you know what, we're going to confirm they're a risky user. So using the risk profile within, within Azure, you can say that user is required to reset their password. They're required to refactor with MFA. Or if you want to be a little more strong with your response, let's go ahead and just disable that user. We say, yes, the user is disabled. However, the thing with Critical Start is anything we do, we want to be able to unwind. Specifically say, your CEO, his account is compromised, you disable. Well, once the activity is cleared, you want to say straight from your phone, let's go ahead and enable that user. So anything you can do, you can also undo. And that's going to be the same for MobileSock as well. Just real quickly, I assign it to myself. I refresh, we go ahead and see that 8 change to a 9, hop right up to the top. It's going to be that impossible travel right there. Just giving you an idea, and I want to confirm and show that you can take the same actions, whether it's from ZTAP, MobileSock, or Microsoft itself. You can run all the additional reconnaissance commands. Hey, what are we actually looking at? But more importantly, taking those response actions. So moving on to really cover something that is pretty unique with what Critical Start does and how we handle Defender for Office. So email reported as malware phish by a user. So this is something that, one, if your users are actually utilizing this function, it means your security awareness program is already better than most. However, what we often see is when users do report emails as malware or phish, it kind of goes into a black hole. The investigation doesn't get run as often as it should, and the user rarely gets feedback. The user doesn't understand, did I do the right thing? Was this actually malware? Kind of confirmation that, I did pay attention in security and awareness training. So what we want to understand is when a user does this, let's let Microsoft run that investigation. It's got about 20 different checks that it does to validate, is this in fact a threat? But I want to see what was the evidence of that threat. So typically, our analysts will go through this entire investigation, but for the sake of time, the thing you want to do, you look at these three variables: SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. Did they pass? So again, for purposes of demonstration, DKIM, there was none. So I'm not a big fan of that. So what I want to do is say, actually do a soft delete of this email, not just from that user's inbox, but from the entire organization. But I did say a soft delete because there are going to be circumstances where something does appear malicious. And I will say, I've been a part of an organization where we leveraged a third party to send out completely valid emails to our entire employee base. It got flagged as malicious and it got deleted by our email security program. However, it was known good. But what that program did was it deleted it. It removed it from the entire organization entirely. What this does is say, let's put the email in the deleted folder. But if it does in fact turn out to be, this was a false positive, despite what Microsoft said, it actually is a known good email we want our users to have, we can restore those emails back into every user's inbox. And then last but not least, and I know we've got about, let's call it 15 minutes left, touching on the Microsoft Sentinel side. Defender, your M365 Defender, really great capabilities around Microsoft. What we want to focus on Sentinel is, everyone has non-Microsoft products. They're running Palos on the network side. They've got some sort of DLP application. They've got, SourceFire for IPS, et cetera. The list goes on. How can Critical Start make sure, again, not only are we getting great out of the box content, but we're enhancing it with some custom IOCs we have? So Sentinel is not the only SIEM we support, but because of that historical support for SIEM, we can add some of that intelligence in and really kind of enhance the capabilities of Sentinel. And so what I want to show here is when we run an investigation, hey, this is just multiple RDP connections coming from a single system, one user on this system, accessed a number of different devices. So what I want to understand is, this is actually a false positive. Let's make that assumption together. How can we ensure we don't continue to have to investigate things we know are definitively good? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through quickly, how do we address that false positive to resolve it today and every time going forward? So what I'm doing is I'm creating a playbook. So I can say, if this user, and this is his full display name, is working from this server, we are confirming that he can in fact access this computer set, these three different device names. However, at that point, we got to make sure, yes, the account he's running from is domain joined, and we can start to choose a ton of different variables to make sure we're getting as much granularity as possible. And so this is how we build up that trusted behavior registry. Can we ensure that we are accepting false positives when they're confirmed known good? And if any one of these variables change, let's make sure that passes right through the TBR and it gets investigated at those 1 hour SLAs. But the big thing I want to mention is these playbooks can be time bound because something might be good over the weekend. My favorite example is I was deploying an application across my environment, and on Friday at about 12 p.m., SCCM went down and it was projected to be down for about 72 hours. Well, over the weekend, I had to deploy application to about 25,000 devices. Fortunately, I could use PowerShell somewhat sufficiently, so I did so. But when I used PS exec, for example, it came across as lateral movement. Tommy's dropping DLLs he shouldn't. However, if I said, only on Saturday and Sunday for this next week, so that we choose an end date of, May 29th, this playbook is good. We can get very granular, not only in the key value pairs, but when is it good? And so that's where I will say I do get to step off the soapbox and make sure if there were any questions, we get them answered. So I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Leonard, I saw at least Ian had some questions. I'm not sure if you've answered those while I'm talking, but I will open it up to the floor if anybody did have questions.
Yeah, no, there's been some great questions in chat that I've been responding to. If anything's not clear for those, please feel free to come off mute and let's just kind of talk through it. But yeah, with that, we'll kind of open it up to Q&A, whether it's anybody that had questions in the chat or anybody that wants to come off mute and tell us a little bit what you're thinking.
If you don't want to come off mute, our email addresses, tommy.scott@criticalstart.com. This is not always the most comfortable venue to ask questions in, so please feel free to send emails, and we'd be happy to support you. Although I will say, Katie, it looks like they can't come off mute based on what Ian just said.
Hey guys, yeah, if you raise your hand, we can manually unmute you.
All
Ian,
right.
you should be able to talk if you'd like to.
Well, I'll just help test to make sure it's working, but I don't know if I have any other questions. Leonard's been doing an awesome job answering all my my weird questions. So thanks, Leonard.
Yeah, cool. No, appreciate the questions. It's always great to hear, what folks are taking away from these things. So I appreciate the participation.
Yeah, I mean, actually, and maybe roll that back. I guess maybe we should, a good potential discussion is around the SKUs and the licensing, right? Because I know that when I was looking at the slide, that was kind of my question. Microsoft makes it hard enough to figure out what you're buying and what you're getting. So can you walk through what that licensing looks like? Because kind of one of those deals where if you're investing in like an E5, you're going to want coverage for the entirety of the E5. So what does that look like from a critical start perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And so this, I think, is the best way to think about the licensing. We try to mirror Microsoft as much as possible. So with Sentinel, their SIM, you're paying per gigabyte of ingest. For our MDR service for that, you're paying per gigabyte of ingest. With Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, they license it really two ways. One way, it's included in E5 or Microsoft 365 Defender Suite. That licensing is user-based licensing, and that includes coverage for all of your PCs, right? Mac, Windows, whatever. So that is one way it's licensed, but for servers, it's actually licensed per device. For us, we have a lot of customers that are, consume EDR only. So we want them to be able to consume just an EDR-based SKU. So we have our MDR for Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, which is per device, whether that device is a server or a PC, whatever. And then we have our M365 Defender offering, which provides that full coverage for E5. So if you're an E5 customer, you have all 6 of the tools in light blue, right? All the Defender for Office, Defender for Identity, Azure Active Directory Identity Protection, Defender for Cloud Apps, and Defender for Endpoint. At that point, for that coverage of all 5 of those from us, with MDR, you would buy both the Defender for Endpoint service and the Defender 365 service. The Defender 365 service is licensed per user. So if you want that coverage for email and identity, essentially, you're looking at just how many E5 licenses do you have? Those are user-based licenses. That will inform our quote for how many MDR from Microsoft 365 Defender licenses you will need. So I hope this helps. I mean, this is where I would try to anchor, your thinking. The one little deviation is the fact that we break out endpoints, whether it's a user device or a server device. All right, cool.
Hey, Leonard, maybe another question from Ian, and I feel like I'm just talking way too much, but your experience with other MDR customers that have maybe invested already in a SOAR platform. So from my perspective, it feels like with MDR, you can choose to kind of go the SOAR route or the MDR route. If you already have a SOAR platform, like how does MDR work with those kind of existing security tools that we have set up, specifically?
Yeah. It's a great question, and Tommy, I'm sure has a point of view as well. I'll give you mine first, real quick, since I'm off mute. I think MDR really, in my mind, would fit in before SOAR. So there's still a place for SOAR in the environment. We might hand things off to you that require additional processes to unfold, right? Whatever that process might be in terms of getting the thing, the user, the device back online, back fully healthy. So, if we isolate a host on your behalf, there's workflow that comes after that, and that's where you could still drive things with SOAR. The other thing is we actually use SOAR in Sentinel to facilitate some of the things that we do on your behalf. So if you think about, our SOC analysts investigating something, responding to something, one of those response might initiate a Sentinel playbook. So, obviously there's potential for other things to come to the right of what we're doing and for you to leverage SOAR still, in that sense. So there's definitely room for both, but Tommy, you can probably put a little finer point on some of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically, how we treat alert triage, with let's resolve things we can definitively say are good first. That takes a lot of the strain off of a SOAR on having to funnel every single alert and have it go pick and choose a couple of different things to automate and then make a determination. We've kind of capitalized on that. So what we're really doing is kind of making the SOAR a little more purposeful. And I will say, with MDR, our response is based on the tools we integrate to. So when we think about, hey, we've seen a Palo threat, a network threat come across through Sentinel, and we see that, we need to take action in Panorama. We don't directly access Panorama. So that's something where we can say, we drop the right level of information into a template, whether it's an email or whether it's an alert going straight to a SOAR, because we do have some integration into some SOAR products. That then allows the SOAR to say, I've got the right information already, and I immediately need to take an action. So it's more about playbook maintenance, because I will say I did run a SOAR as well. And, day one, I implemented it and I had an idea. I was going to deploy 120 playbooks and it was going to be great. I think I topped out at about 14 playbooks that actually, I don't want to say did something, because that makes it sound like it didn't do enough, but it was trying to make sure we're getting the most use out of the SOAR without just funneling things to it, and then have it ultimately just spit out things that your analysts are still required to investigate.
And Tommy, I'd like to add in there too. So from a CyberOne side, we can help mature your SOAR capabilities within Sentinel and help work through the various use cases. And like Tommy said, at the end, you might start with 20 and only actually utilize 8, 10, which are actually viable solutions for your business.
All right, Leonard, I feel like if we can give some people some time back, don't tell any of your colleagues you've got 10 extra minutes, and then I think we can call it.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute there. Yeah, I agree, guys. So we appreciate you investing the time with us here today. And another poll is going to be popping up as we wrap things up. So as you see that, pop up, I think that really the thing is there is, if you're curious, let's dig in deeper, right? So this is really just more of an introduction, more of a level set. So if you want to hear more, if you want to dig in deeper, let's do that, right? In kind of more of a one-on-one setting. So appreciate the time again. Enjoy the rest of your day.